Let's talk about validation for a second here. Who here can relate to the constant need or addiction to fighting with a narcissist? The need to be validated when you know they're doing their crazy making activity and you're fighting with lack of logic, lack of rationale, complete idiocy. But you will not give up. You know on a logical level, you know on a cognitive level that they're nuts and this is insane that you're even fighting about this. But why is it that you keep fighting? To be validated, to be right, to be heard. Why? Remember when I talked about the 10 signs of childhood trauma and one of them was seeking validation? This is where this comes from. This is part of the validation. This isn't necessarily seeking validation and being validated by everybody around you, but especially when you're dealing with an abusive person. Why do we do this? Why do we get addicted to this? Because this is history repeating itself. This is trauma that has not been healed, that will continue to show up as many times as it needs to and before we actually understand where it comes from. So take a child, go back to a caregiver that constantly invalidates, always blames, always accuses, always is putting that child in a place of never being heard, validated, or are right, or being blamed for everything. What do you think happens to that child? Their brain is hardwired to believe that they are not worthy, they are not good enough. And even though that they know that they're arguing with irrational then, you're in a powerless position because the caretaker is always in control and always in power. From my own personal experience, I remember standing in a doorway listening to one of my caretakers saying to me, even when I'm wrong, I'm right. Even when I know I'm wrong, I will always be right. You will never be right. So what do you think happened as I grew and I got into relationships with people that were not healthy, toxic, and fighting with me all the time, or arguing their stupid, illogical, irrational points? It took me back to having that same argument with my caregiver where I stood there powerless, was always being blamed for their unhappiness, was always being accused and was always wrong and was always screwing up and was always making mistakes and was never good enough. So what do you think I did? I constantly got caught up in the fight cycle of fighting with lack of logic rather than choosing peace and walking away. I want you guys to share your stories below if you can relate.